Hello and welcome to this edition of Talk Time. I am Paranjoy Guha Thakurta in the studio of Lok Sabha Television here in New Delhi. In this edition of the program, we are going to look at inequality, but in particular economic inequality, inequalities of income and wealth. In the process, we are also going to look at other kinds of inequality, including gender inequality, caste inequality, and try and understand how these feed into one another. We're going to look at why the world has become a more unequal place. Why across countries we see the gap between the rich and the poor widening. And we also see that happening in our own country here in India. And the idea is to look at why this has happened and what can be done and what should be done in terms of government policies and government intervention. We're going to look at the contents of this recently produced report, Even It Up, Time to End Extreme Inequality. This report was recently prepared. It's been prepared by this international non-government organization called Oxfam. I'm very happy to have with me here in the studio Nisha Agarwal. She's the CEO of Oxfam India, has been with Oxfam India since its inception in March 2008. Earlier worked with the World Bank and worked with the World Bank for 18 years, worked in different countries in Asia and Africa, including Cambodia, Vietnam, Indonesia, Tanzania, Kenya, Uganda, as a doctorate in economics from the University of Virginia in the United States. And with us here is Professor Rohini Somanathan, teaches economics at the Delhi School of Economics, received a PhD from Boston University, has held faculty positions in the Emory University, the University of Michigan, and the Indian Statistical Institute. And her research has focused on how social institutions interact with public policies to determine patterns of economic and social inequality. Thank you, Professor Somanathan, for coming here. Nishaji, let me ask you the first question. If we look at the principal reasons why inequality across the world, in most countries across the world, barring a few, and we can talk about the exceptions, why has it grown, and to what extent has been the Great Recession, which 6 years ago it started and it's continuing across the world, ये जो विश्वव्यापी जो आर्थिक संकट के दौर से अभी भी बहुत सारे देश गुजर रहे हैं, ये जो अमीर और गरीब के बीच जो ये बढ़ गया क्यों, ये प्रधान कारण क्या है?
हम लोग ये ऑक्सफैम की रिपोर्ट में कहते हैं कि देयर आर टू मेन रीजंस एक्चुअली, एंड दिस इज अ ट्रेंड दैट वी आर फाइंडिंग वर्ल्ड वाइड ऑफ ग्रोइंग इनइक्वालिटी, एंड वी आर सेइंग कि 70% ऑफ पीपल टुडे आजकल आर लिविंग इन कंट्रीज जहाँ पे इनइक्वालिटी बढ़ रही है, ये अमीर और गरीबों के बीच का फासला बढ़ रहा है. तो ये सिर्फ इंडिया में नहीं, ये ग्लोबल प्रॉब्लम है.
यानी कि ये विश्व में सिर्फ 30% लोग हैं ऐसे देश में रहते हैं जो अमीर और गरीब के बीच में दुराई नहीं बढ़ रहे.
या तो हाँ, बिल्कुल. तो ये आजकल आप देखें, ये रिपोर्ट के शुरू में कई लोग ऐसे कह रहे हैं, और इंक्लूडिंग सिर्फ एनजीओ लोग नहीं, ऑक्सफैम जैसे या एकेडमिक्स, सब कह रहे हैं कि दिस इज वन ऑफ द बिगेस्ट रिस्क फैक्टर्स फॉर द स्टेबिलिटी एंड पीस ऑफ द वर्ल्ड. मतलब इतना ज्यादा बैंकर्स और आईएमएफ के हेड और वर्ल्ड बैंक के हेड और
जी बहुत सबसे जो धनी व्यक्ति है विश्व में, वॉरेन बुफेट, वो कहते हैं कि विश्व में द फोर्थ वेल्थीएस्ट पर्सन, उन्होंने खुद कह रहे देयर हैज बीन क्लास वॉरफेयर गोइंग ऑन फॉर द लास्ट 20 years and my class is one. आपने सोचा कि वो कार्ल मार्क्स की
बिल्कुल
चेला है,
मगर ये ज्यादा फर्क नहीं दिखाई दे रहा कार्ल मार्क्स के बीच में और वर्ल्ड इकोनॉमिक फोरम, जहाँ पे ये दुनिया के सारे सबसे बड़े बड़े कॉर्पोरेट्स इकट्ठे होते हैं. For the third year in a row, they have identified rising income inequality and wealth inequality as one of the biggest risk factors to world peace and stability. मतलब इतना बड़ा इशू बन गया है ये कि आजकल के ज़माने में कोई ये नहीं कहेगा अब कि ये इंपॉर्टेंट इशू नहीं है. पहली बात तो ये है. एंड दिस इज अ बिग चेंज इन द लास्ट 10 years. इससे पहले कई लोग कहते थे इतना ज़रूरी नहीं है, लेट्स फोकस ऑन पॉवर्टी.
तो अब आपका कहना ये है कि इसमें कोई जो आर्थिक या अर्थव्यवस्था के ऊपर जो चिंताधारा है, जो पूंजीवाद में विश्वास करते हैं, समाजवाद में विश्वास करते हैं, ये इतना आज महत्वपूर्ण नहीं है. ये जो मुद्दा पूरा विश्व में हम देख रहे हैं कि हर तरीका का, हर देशों में इसके ऊपर लोग चिंतित हैं काफी.
हाँ, और आप पूछ रहे थे कि ये क्यों ये ऐसे बढ़ रहा है. हम लोग कहते हैं कि इसके दो कारण हैं. एक तो व्हाट वी कॉल मार्केट फंडामेंटलिज्म, मतलब पहले ऐसे माना जाता था कि मार्केट का एक रोल है, सरकार का एक रोल है और सिविल सोसाइटी का एक रोल है। 3 पिलर्स होते हैं सोसाइटी के और तीनों को मिलजुल के आगे बढ़ना चाहिए। अभी क्या हुआ है, ये जो स्पेशली 1980 से लेके, लेकिन कोई कोई लोग तो कहते हैं कि ये कई हंड्रेड्स ऑफ ईयर्स से ये इस तरह से इनइक्वालिटी बढ़ती जा रही है, बट स्पेशली 80s और 90s में इस तरह की पॉलिसीज फॉलो हुई हैं पूरी दुनिया में, जहां की मार्केट का रोल ज्यादा प्रोमिनेंट हो गया है।
Okay, let me stop you here, Nisha ji. And let me get Professor Rohini Somanathan into our conversation. निशा मैम कह रहे हैं कि ये जो आर्थिक उदारीकरण की नीति भारतवर्ष में भी 20-22 साल हो गए, 23 साल हो गए, मगर पूरा विश्व में आप देख रहे हैं कि आज ये जो बाजार के ऊपर जो निर्भर करते हैं, द डिपेंडेंस दैट द मार्केट एंड द फ्री मार्केट सो टू से would solve a lot of your economic problems. That's been proved wrong. In fact, आप अर्थशास्त्री हैं, ये as economist Thomas Piketty, Capital in the 21st Century, has clearly demonstrated without government intervention, the market economy tends to concentrate wealth in the hands of a few and causing inequality to rise. तो आप इस विषय के ऊपर एक अर्थशास्त्री के रूप से आप क्या कहना चाहेंगे कि 2008 के बाद जो ये विश्वव्यापी आर्थिक संकट के बाद ये what is different today from what the situation that prevailed say 10 years ago or 20 years ago or 30 years ago?
Not much different actually. So the attention to inequality really came about in the US in the 1980s when data was very good and it documented that inequalities were rising. And in a sense, what's happened today is it's become a very large public issue, and the common man is talking about inequality, and academics are writing in the popular press about inequality, and people are in a sense fed up with inequality. But the trend of rising inequality is much older. And in the 80s, there was a lot of discussion in the United States about why inequality is rising. और कुछ लोग कहते थे कि क्योंकि जो जॉब्स हैं यूएस में वो ज़्यादा स्किल डिपेंडेंट हो गए हैं, कंप्यूटर्स आ गए हैं और कॉलेज की ज़रूरत है, तो बहुत सी चर्चा चली थी उस समय कि क्यों इनइक्वालिटी बढ़ रही है। तो जो हम आज देख रहे हैं उसकी वो बहुत पहले शुरू हुआ था।
एक मिनट, you're trying to say that this is a continuation of past trends. The point I'm asking is, has the situation worsened in particular after the Great Recession, which became evident when Wall Street collapsed in September 2008? Did these trends get worse over the last 6 years or thereabouts?
So what has got worse is really the gap between the rich and the poor. What happened is that the poor in most countries stayed at relatively the same real standard of living, and wealth got much more concentrated among the very rich. And what happened really was not documented well because we didn't have good data on inequality. So part of the big contribution made by Thomas Piketty and others is really to tell you what was happening in the top 1%. उसके पहले कोई वो 1% की बात नहीं करता था क्योंकि हमें अंदाज नहीं था कि
ये आपका जो ऑक्सफैम का रिपोर्ट है इसमें सीधा सीधा लिखा है। निशा जी, आप इसके ऊपर और कुछ जोड़ने चाहते हैं तो कहिए। At the start of 2014, Oxfam calculated that the richest 85 persons on this planet, 85 individuals, owned as much as the poorest half of humanity. So if you assume there are 7 billion people on this planet, 3.5 billion people own as much wealth as less than 100 of the richest people. And this is nothing short of utterly scandalous, isn't it?
Yes. एंड आई थिंक आप कह रहे हैं कि ये फाइनेंशियल क्राइसिस के बाद क्या हुआ, जैसे रोहिणी कह रही है कि लंबा ट्रेंड है और इनइक्वालिटी पे डेटा अच्छा नहीं होता और इतनी 5, 6, 10 ईयर्स में देखना भी मुश्किल है कि क्या हो रहा है क्या नहीं हो रहा है। पर एक बात जरूर हुई है विच इज, क्योंकि ये 1% पे अब फोकस आया, ये जो ऑक्यूपाई 1% मूवमेंट हुआ था ये फाइनेंशियल क्राइसिस के बाद हुआ था, क्योंकि
ऑक्यूपाई वॉल स्ट्रीट
ये इट वाज द वन, और इट वाज आल्सो कॉल्ड द 1%,
दैट्स राइट,
अगेंस्ट द 1%। ये 1% पे अब ध्यान आ रहा है क्योंकि ऐसे ऐसे स्टैटिस्टिक्स निकल के आ रहे हैं which are showing the very extreme nature of inequality.
Okay.
Or people are full of anger now and they're coming out on the streets against this.
Now, 1 minute, Professor Somanathan, you're not just an economist, you've studied history. You know, we can go back to the days of the French Revolution or the Russian Revolution and what happened in Mao Zedong. But some of the facts over here are truly astounding and nothing short of scandalous. And I'll just read out a few chunks of it. If Bill Gates were to cash all his wealth and spend $1 million every single day, it would still take him 218 years to spend it all. And since the financial crisis, the ranks of the world's billionaire has more than doubled. It's now swollen to over 1,600 people, and it's not just what they say a developed country story, a rich country story. The world's richest man is Carlos Slim of Mexico, and he knocked Bill Gates off the top spot in July. There are 16 billionaires in sub-Saharan Africa who coexist with 358 million people living in extreme poverty. I mean, this is absurd levels of wealth coexisting with desperate levels of poverty. And I'm just quoting what the Oxfam report is saying. Yes, your views.
Well, my views is you have to look between the billionaires and everyone else. So our problem is not that they're billionaires, but it's really that the structure of society is such that other people are not facing equal opportunities to come, not into the top 1%, but the top 10% or the top 20%. And so what we care about is really what kind of structures in society will give opportunities to really people to have a future which is independent of how they were born or where they were born. And that's really what concerns us. Billionaire figures are easy to get. They're sort of impressive.
Forbes puts it out every now and then. Yes,
that's
please.
right. So what we're really interested in is what kind of systems of health, of education, of just mobility, credit, what are the changes that can come about so that someone who's born in the bottom 10% can move to the, somewhere in the bottom 40% even. And there's been a lot of discussion of the very top and the bottom, but what we're really also interested in is, what is government doing with the market? We can say that there's a lot of emphasis on market forces, but clearly there's also been a lot of concentration of wealth that's abetted by the government.
We'll look at government policy and we'll look a little bit at how government policies either exacerbate, as she pointed out earlier, market fundamentalism, capture of political power by elites. We're going to deal with these issues in greater detail. But Nishaji, just sticking to what Oxfam has calculated, that if you just put a tax of 1.5% on the wealth of the world's billionaires, you could solve many of the problems of the globe. I mean, you've just said that 23 million lives in the poorest 49 countries could be provided proper health care. A tax of 1.5% on the richest could fill the annual gaps in funding to put every single child through school and deliver proper healthcare services. So what you are arguing, and here some liberals could disagree with you, you're saying some inequality is necessary to reward talent, skills and a willingness to innovate and take entrepreneurial risk. But today's extremes of economic inequality undermine growth, undermine progress and fail to invest in the potential of hundreds of millions of people. Yes.
Just exactly what Rohini was saying. We don't really, not that we don't care. We care about the 1% only because of what that implies for the bottom, let's say 30%. Right now we are saying 30% of India's population is poor, by which we mean they don't have enough to eat, they're not getting the opportunity to get a proper education, they're not getting health care, and they will not be able to move ahead and grab all these opportunities that are being created by the growth in our country. Now, what is the link there? One of the statistics which you haven't read out, we are saying since the liberalization in India 1990 से जब हमने markets अपने खोले थे,
आर्थिक उदारीकरण के दौर के बाद, हाँ बताइए,
हमारी भी inequality बढ़ रही है, rich और poor के बीच में हमारे भी billionaires बन रहे हैं, जो अगर हम उस inequality को अब बढ़ना रोक दें from now for the next 10 years, in that time we could lift 90 more million people out of poverty in India. That's our goal. That's what drives us. कि किस तरह से जल्दी से at least the right to a basic life with dignity.
Right.
That's how we put it.
And Professor Rohini Somanathan, the richest man in India, lives with his family in a 27-storied building in Mumbai. But the new Maharajas, India was always an unequal society, but these kind of glaring instances of inequality, how come it's not, resulted in more outrage and anger? Or do you think we see that outrage
I
and
think
anger?
there is a fair amount of outrage and anger, but there's also desperation, hopelessness. I mean, the outrage and anger is relatively limited compared to the general
Okay.
disenchantment with government, with things that people should be getting.
All right.
That's really
Okay.
where we should look.
I'm just stopping here because we take a break in our program, and I'll return to both of you. We have a number of issues to discuss. I want you to explain in some detail. You talk about market fundamentalism. You talk about capture of political power by elites. But I want you to explain why extreme inequality hurts growth, poverty reduction, widens gender inequalities, healthcare, education. We want to talk about some of these issues. We want to look specifically at what's happening, say, in India. We want to look at how food inflation, for instance, has worsened inequality. So I'll return to both of you. We take a break in our program, and we'll be back with you in a short while from now. We are looking at extreme inequality, the gap between the rich and the poor. See this chapter. Here is see this book. It's a recent publication brought out by Oxfam. Here is a person selling watermelons on a bicycle, and behind him is an advertisement of a picture here of a person reclining first class in an aircraft. Yeah, that's the reality of the world we live in. We're going to look at why we are where we are and what can be done, if something can be done. Stay with us. We'll be back. Welcome back to our discussion on extreme inequality in the context of this recently released report by Oxfam. With me here in the studio of Lok Sabha Television, I have Nisha Agarwal, CEO of Oxfam India, worked 18 years with the World Bank as a doctorate in economics from the University of Virginia, also worked as a research economist at the University of Melbourne. With us here is Rohini Somanathan of the Delhi School of Economics. She's been working on issues relating to inequality, effects of economic liberalization on productivity, wage inequality, access to microfinance, school nutrition programs. निशा जी, सवाल ये लोग बार बार पूछ रहे हैं कि देखिए भारतवर्ष में जिस रफ्तार से खाद्यान्न का दाम बढ़ा, इसका एक असर पड़ा कि अमीर और गरीब के बीच दुराहे बढ़ गए हैं. आप पिछले 10 साल देखिए. Never before in the history of India have food prices risen at such a pace, so persistently. We know that food accounts for a high proportion of the income of a poor family. To what extent has the government's failure to check food inflation in a country like India contributed to the growth in inequality, and to what extent is this a phenomenon that we see in other countries in the world as well?
I think that is one of the factors, but if you look at the long-term trend, because this is not something that is just happening today, the rise in inequality. As I was saying, if you just take that moment of 1990 and the opening up of markets from then, हमारा क्या हुआ? We opened up to global markets.
विश्वकरण के युग में हम लोग आ गए.
इंडिया को हमने
भारतवर्ष
लिंक
का
कर दिया.
अर्थव्यवस्था पूरा विश्व का अर्थव्यवस्था के साथ और नजदीक आ गया.
ज्यादातर सर्विसेज सेक्टर खोले हमने, बैंकिंग, आईटी, एयरलाइंस, या आप कवर की बात कर रहे थे. इन सब lot of new jobs and lot of new opportunities were created in these sectors. लेकिन these are all the same issue that in the US. They require skilled workers. They require educated workers. People who had that chance grabbed it and moved on and have created this enormous wealth for the country. लेकिन हमारे आजकल के गरीब लोग किस में कहाँ रहते हैं? अभी भी 50% of the population is deriving their livelihoods from agriculture. I think this is the single biggest failure जो हम 12th 5-year plan में कहते हैं कि हम इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ चाहते हैं और हम सस्टेनेबल ग्रोथ चाहते हैं. दोनों चीज़ों के बीच में एक ही चीज़ है that will hold it together, and that is investing in agriculture.
Okay. Professor Rohini Somanathan, as an economist, you said this is the biggest structural problem of the Indian economy. The world over, the share of agriculture as a proportion of gross domestic product tends to come down. In India, it's what, about 16%, 17% of GDP? But as Nishaji just pointed out, half your population is still dependent on agriculture for a livelihood. And this, together with food inflation, has really sharpened and widened inequalities in this country, has it not?
It has, but I don't see food as being the main problem. The main problem is people going to school and not being able to read at the end of it, teachers not showing up, not having government centers for health that function.
शिक्षा व्यवस्था और स्वास्थ्य केंद्र में जो सेवा सरकार को और या जो मिलना चाहिए वो नहीं मिल रहा है, ये प्राथमिक शिक्षा केंद्र में या स्वास्थ्य केंद्र में.
I think that's what the government should have been doing. If it had done that well, then actually the market could have offered opportunities to a lot of people that weren't able to take advantage of them simply because they didn't have the skills. As Nisha said, that would let them take advantage of them. I mean, in terms of food, there's actually, if you look at things like the public distribution system, now the Food Security Act, food supply to the poor has not been, it's been growing quite rapidly. Inflation has been growing, but I think the big problems are really in the government providing public goods, which it hasn't been able to do effectively. And I see that as the source of inequality.
निशा जी, आपके ये ऑक्सफैम का रिपोर्ट में आपने कहा कि जो एक्सट्रीम इनइक्वालिटी इज अ बिग बैरियर टू नॉट ओनली पॉवर्टी रिडक्शन, इट अंडरमाइंस इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ इटसेल्फ. अब इस विषय के ऊपर आप कुछ बात कीजिए, क्योंकि बहुत सारे उदाहरण आपका ये रिपोर्ट में है. जैसे एक उदाहरण मैं देना चाहता हूँ. Income distribution within a country has a significant impact on the life chances of its people. Bangladesh and Nigeria, for instance, have similar average incomes, but Nigeria is only slightly richer but far less equal. Consequently, a child born in Nigeria is 3 times more likely to die before their 5th birthday than a child born in Bangladesh.
I think ये अब ग्रोथ और इनइक्वालिटी के बीच की जो रिलेशनशिप है और इन दोनों के बीच में पॉवर्टी की क्या रिलेशनशिप है, दिस इज the heart of the issue. There might have been anger in the past, Karl Marx have written about it, but hardcore economists didn't take the issue of inequality very seriously. They took the issue of growth very seriously and they took the issue of poverty very seriously. ग्रोथ के बारे में हम क्या सोचते थे, इन दोनों के बीच में क्या लिंक है, जो हम ट्रिकल डाउन थ्योरी बोलते थे कि अगर आप मार्केट
तो रोनाल्ड रेगन की बात कर रहे हैं.
रोनाल्ड रेगन, मार्गरेट थैचर, इंडिया पोस्ट 1990, हम सबकी एक ही जैसी थिंकिंग थी, विच वॉज वेरी मेन स्ट्रीम इकोनॉमिक्स एक्चुअली, कि मार्केट्स खोल दो, जिसकी वेल्थ बन रही है बनने दो, डोंट स्टॉप दैट. और उसके बाद थ्रू पॉलिसीज ऑफ टैक्स एंड रीडिस्ट्रीब्यूशन एटसेट्रा, देन इन्वेस्ट इन हेल्थ एंड एजुकेशन एंड क्रिएट दैट इक्वल अपॉर्चुनिटी ड्रीम दैट रोहिणी वाज टॉकिंग अबाउट. पर ये इस तरह से साइकिल होएगी कि रिच लोगों की इनकम बढ़ने दो, उनसे टैक्स से पैसा लो एंड देन प्रोवाइड पब्लिक सर्विसेज. और यही मॉडल ग्रोथ का और इनइक्वालिटी का और पॉवर्टी का वाज द ओनली फीजिबल थिंग. तो बहुत टाइम के बाद, अब ये इतना सारा रिसर्च करने के बाद, अगेन IMF, नॉट NGOs, नॉट Oxfam or anybody else is saying actually this is not the right way to think about it. There inequality, more unequal countries also grow less fast and that growth is less robust, and this is turning everything on its head. It's still hard for economists to grapple with that कि growth कहाँ से आ रही है, कोई पैसा खर्च कर रहा है, वो चीज़ें बन रही हैं. अगर हमारे में जो एग्रीकल्चर फार्मर्स हैं, अगर उनकी इनकम बढ़ेगी, जो आजकल अब हो रहा है एनरेगा और चीज़ों के बाद, वो जब खर्च करेंगे वो दूसरी तरह की ग्रोथ आएगी, पर वो भी ग्रोथ ही है. अच्छा, उनकी नीड्स पूरी हो रही हैं इंस्टेड ऑफ कि ऊपर वालों से फिर टैक्स के थ्रू और फिर उनको रीडिस्ट्रीब्यूट करा जाए.
अध्यापक रोहिणी सोमनाथन जी, इससे पहले हमने थॉमस पिकेटी का बात किया, कैपिटल इन द 21st सेंचुरी. अर्थशास्त्री बहुत सारे, साइमन कुजनेट्स, आपने इन लोगों के बारे में आप सरल भाषा में लोगों को समझा दीजिए. उनका कहना था कि जब आपका जो अर्थव्यवस्था, जब आपका सकल घरेलू उत्पाद और GDP और नेशनल इनकम जब अगर रफ्तार से बढ़ना शुरू होता है, तो हाँ कुछ तो अमीर और गरीब के बीच दोराई बढ़ ही जाएंगे. लोग कहते हैं ये आपका 5 उंगली है एक हाथ में, they all can't be the same. But I'll just read a paragraph from this report and I'd like your comments. It says, and I quote the report, there are clear lessons to be learned from recent history. In the 80s and the 90s, debt crises saw countries in Latin America, Africa, Asia and the former Eastern Bloc subjected to a cold shower of deregulation, rapid reductions in public spending, privatization, financial and trade liberalization, generous tax cuts for corporations and the wealthy, and a race to the bottom to weaken labor rights. Consequently, economic inequality rose. By 2000, inequality in Latin America had reached an all-time high, and now we see Latin America making changes in a different direction. It is estimated that half of the increase in poverty over this period was due to redistribution of wealth in favor of the richest. And in Russia, economic inequality almost doubled in the 20 years after 1991, after the Soviet Union disintegrated. तो ये जो हम बहुत लोग आज कहते हैं कि ये आर्थिक उदारीकरण का रास्ता है, सरकार को अर्थव्यवस्था से दूर होना चाहिए, डीरेगुलेशन इज द मंत्रा. आप क्या कहना चाहते हैं इसके बारे में?
I think that some of the deregulation has been very useful because it got firms to compete with the rest of the world. It raised quality standards. It gave people opportunities who were getting an education. As I said, I think the failure was really that you weren't pulling everyone into the system. So there has been a middle class in India that has been growing. The problem is you haven't been able to pull people right at the bottom because you haven't had schools function, you haven't had health systems function. And so these are people who've remained disconnected. And while in the 70s, when economists wrote about poverty, they recognized that there were these people who were left out of the system and they needed special attention. But that rhetoric even has somehow disappeared. And I think that's what we really need to focus on. And so in terms of labor rights, it's a little bit different because you can strengthen labor rights. The unions were actually quite strong in India, but the problem was a lot of workers were not unionized. So when you actually got...
अगर आप ऑर्गेनाइज सेक्टर की बात करेंगे तो भाई 90% से ज़्यादा लोग अभी तो अनऑर्गेनाइज सेक्टर.
तो जो भी आप करें ऑर्गेनाइज सेक्टर के साथ उनको तो कोई फायदा नहीं पहुंचेगा.
हम इस विषय के ऊपर और थोड़ा we'll try and go into it in some greater depth. This whole issue of gender inequalities of opportunities. और मैं आप लोगों से दोनों से ये कहना चाहता हूँ कि how do we get out of this extreme inequality? I mean, what kind of state intervention? आपने थोड़ा बहुत इस विषय के ऊपर बात किया, but let's discuss this in greater detail. Interventions by the government in healthcare and education. Let's look at some of these issues. Let's look at the experiences across the world. What are the lessons that a country like India needs to learn? So I'll get back to both of you. We are about halfway through our discussion. We are looking at extreme inequality across the world, extreme inequality in India. Is it inevitable? Is it an inevitable consequence of economic growth? Or can we do something to reduce extreme inequality? We'll be back with you. Stay with us. Welcome back to our discussion on inequality, economic inequality, other kinds of inequalities. I am here with two experts. We are discussing the contents of this recently released report by Oxfam. It's called End It Up, Time to End Extreme Inequality. With me here in the studio of Lok Sabha Television, Nisha Agarwal of Oxfam India, Professor Rohini Somanathan of the Delhi School of Economics. Nisha ji, I want you to talk a little bit about gender inequality and to some extent maybe even caste inequality and how economic inequalities actually compounds and worsens these kinds of inequalities, gender inequalities and the consequences of having a society where the male-female divide has also widened as a result of economic inequalities. I want you to explain this. आप सरल भाषा में लोगों को समझाइए.
This report focuses largely on economic inequality between the rich and the poor, पर जिन dimensions की आप बात कर रहे हैं वो इंडिया के लिए बहुत important हैं. यहाँ पे जो वर्ल्ड बैंक ने स्टडी करी है ये कि who is below the poverty line, looking at amongst the poor, caste के basis पे दलित्स, रिलीजन के बेसिस पे मुस्लिम्स, these people are on,
और आदिवासी लोग भी ले आइए,
वो तो और भी, अभी उनकी तो मैं बात करने वाली हूँ. ये दोनों ग्रुप्स are about 10 years behind the average poor और आदिवासी people are 20 years behind the average poor. हम लोग काम करते हैं ऑक्सफैम छत्तीसगढ़, झारखंड और उड़ीसा में 3 और बाकी स्टेट्स में भी, पर इन 3 स्टेट्स में जो आप देखते हैं जो रोहिणी डिस्क्राइब कर रही थी, a complete absence of the state in terms of service delivery. छत्तीसगढ़ आजकल न्यूज में है, इट्स हार्ट ब्रेकिंग न्यूज.
आप जानते हैं क्या
कि औरतों के साथ क्या हाल हो रहा है, कि हमारा ही देश है कि सारा बर्डन इवन ऑफ कॉन्ट्रासेप्शन falls on women when we know how much easier it would be to provide those same services for men. So gender inequality then cuts across each of these three groups on the basis of caste, on the basis of religion, and amongst the tribal population, and I would say across all classes in India. It's women, if you take any indicator, economic indicators, whether it's say property rights, a very basic one. अगर हमारी औरतें अगर किसान हैं तो अगर आपके पास लैंड आपके नाम से नहीं होएगा तो सरकार जितने भी इनपुट्स प्रोवाइड कर रही है, वेदर इट्स एक्सटेंशन, रिसर्च, अदर इनपुट्स, फाइनेंस, टेक्नोलॉजी, आप कुछ भी एक्सेस नहीं कर पाते क्योंकि आपको मानता ही नहीं कोई कि आप द वुमेन आर द फार्मर्स ऑफ दिस कंट्री. So on property rights, other countries have done that, where it's very easy. The state could just add the name of the woman, the wife of a farmer, onto the property rights title.
All right.
Vietnam has done that overnight. हमारे में ऐसा है कि अपनी बीवी का भी नाम आप डालोगे तो it's as if it's a fresh sale and you have to actually pay a registration fee and the whole fee as if you're paying to somebody else. I mean, it's a stroke of the pen reform that would empower half the population of this country.
रोहिणी जी, आप जरा निशा जी अभी जो बात किया इसके ऊपर और विस्तार में और कहिए, क्योंकि ये रिपोर्ट में लिखा हुआ है जेंडर, कास्ट, रेस, रिलीजन, एथनिसिटी एंड अ रेंज ऑफ अदर आइडेंटिटीज दैट आर ascribed to people from birth also play a significant role in creating the division between the haves and the have-nots. और भारतवर्ष का जो समाज आप देख रहे हैं, जो अर्थव्यवस्था में देख रहे हैं, अभी जैसे निशा जी कहा, those who are already backward, they seem to be slipping further and further down that social and economic ladder. I mean, the social ladder and the economic ladder is almost kind of become overlap. They overlap each other.
Yeah, I think it's much more complicated than that. The relationship between social identity on the one hand and economic inequality is very complicated. If you look at the United States, for example, which had a long history of slavery, and there were big differences between black and white populations. And then over time, these wage gaps and income gaps narrowed, but there was still a lot of discrimination. You find very little intermarriage between the groups. And again, I think that's some of what's happened in India when you look across caste and religion. We'll really achieve something when people are mixing, when they're marrying, when they're really not thinking about the identity of the other person when they're talking to them. And I think we've made some progress in narrowing gaps in terms of education.
But we have a long way to go, surely.
We have a long way, but I think our problems are really in reducing stigma. And I think that when we've moved along this income ladder, we haven't really been able to bridge the gaps of stigma, and that's what we want to ask ourselves. So I think these are different axes. They're not two words for the same thing. And we really, again, when you think about women, they're very wealthy women who feel extremely unsafe. They feel that they don't have the same opportunities. They feel overworked in their homes. So I think these are different axes, and we have to talk about them together, but at the same time distinguishing between them. They are different concepts.
अभी recently एक अखबार में खबर थी कि only 5% of marriages in India are either intercaste or interreligion. जो आप कह रहे हो कि मिक्सिंग नहीं है बिल्कुल.
I'm again, let me read out a paragraph from this report, and I want both of you to comment on this. It says many feel that some economic inequality is acceptable so long as those who study and work hard are able to succeed and become richer. And this idea is deeply entrenched in popular narratives and reinforced in dozens of Hollywood films of these rags to riches stories that continue to feed the myth of the American dream. और आप जब हॉलीवुड के बात कर रहे हैं, आप बॉलीवुड की बात कीजिए. ये भी हम कहानी देखते हैं, बहुत सारे हम चलचित्र में हम ऐसे कहानी देख रहे हैं. However, as you say, the reality is that the children of the rich will largely replace their parents in the economic hierarchy, as will the children of those living in poverty, regardless of their potential or how hard they work. Yet these stereotypes persist. The stereotype that you are poor because you are lazy. इस विषय के ऊपर आपको ये कि आप गरीब हैं, क्यों आप आलस है, आप काम करने के लिए तैयार नहीं है. और ये मानसिकता है, ये जो लोगों के अंदर जो चिंताधारा है, ये बहुत लोगों के अंदर है.
When our constitution was written, if you read that, it's one of the most aspirational, documents in the world which says that every person has the same rights.
जी हाँ.
And that we must create a land of equal opportunity where every person also has the potential to realize those same
बिल्कुल
rights.
जी, हमारे संविधान में ये सब लिखा हुआ है.
ये सब लिखा हुआ है और आज आप reality देखो, people are stuck in boxes and they're stuck below lines that we create, these poverty lines, and they're not able to move out. And this myth that somehow कि अगर आप hard work कर लोगे और अपने बल पे ही आगे बढ़ जाओगे, अमेरिका में भी ये बहुत, this myth has played this role of saying that you know the government should have a very small role. हमारे भी अब कहने लगे हैं minimum government. मतलब क्या है इसका? reality कुछ और है. 1/3 even in America of those who are rich is through inheritance. It's not through hard work.
प्रधानमंत्री मोदी जी कह रहे हैं minimum government, maximum governance.
और मिनिमम गवर्नमेंट मतलब गवर्नमेंट का जो रोल होना चाहिए उतना ही सरकार होना चाहिए, हम भी यही कहेंगे. पर ये जो रोल बार-बार रोहिणी कह रही है, ये हेल्थ और एजुकेशन,
इस विषय के ऊपर हम और आगे बढ़ेंगे. बट रोहिणी जी, the research in this report shows that there's a strong correlation between extreme inequality and low social mobility. So if you're born poor in a highly unequal country, you're most probably going to die poor, and so will be your children and your grandchildren. So this myth of the rags to riches story, fed by popular films and books, how far do they sort of reinforce certain stereotypes that the poor are poor because they're lazy?
It's funny, but I think that is part of, in some countries, that is the notion. I don't think in India we think you're poor because you're lazy. I think we recognize that there are real barriers to poverty. I think we're still not committed to actually removing them. I think that's the real problem. I mean, a lot of us know you're poor because you're born into a particular caste or a religion, or, you know, I think we recognize social barriers. We just don't do enough to remove them. So there's a big gap between rhetoric and really policy that's directed at removing these barriers. I think that's a problem. And fundamentally, I think the biggest problem today is really that every person needs to have a vision of where they want to be. But what's missing, and they do have that, but I think what's missing is having a vision of where we want our society to be. And I think if we each have a little bit more of that, then there's a lot that can happen. I'm quite optimistic.
All right. I'm going to quiz you about why you're optimistic, because many people would argue that there is reason to be quite pessimistic, even if you would like to be realistic. So we take a third break. It's a final break in our discussion. And in the fourth segment, there are 2 or 3 points which I'd like both of you to talk about. This whole issue of capture of power in politics by elites, which have fueled inequality. That's one part. I also want to talk about what can be done to end extreme inequality. The report talks about the low road and the high road. So I'd like you to talk about a little bit about these issues when we come back after the break. We are looking at inequality, and we'll be back with you in a short while from now. Stay with us. Welcome back to the fourth and the final segment of this discussion on inequality in the context of the recently released report by Oxfam. This is the report. It's called Even It Up, Time to End Extreme Inequality. With me here in the studio, I have Nisha Agarwal of Oxfam India, Rohini Somanathan, Professor at the Delhi School of Economics. निशा जी, ये आपके जी रिपोर्ट में ये कहा कि कुछ लोगों पूरा क्षमता इनके हाथ में है. Capture of political power by elites, and that has fueled inequalities. और जैसे भारतवर्ष आप देख रहे हैं, बहुत कम लोग आयकर देते हैं. आप कह रहे हैं इनको तो आप इनके ऊपर कर बैठाइए और लोगों को फायदा मिलेगा. Isn't it shocking that a country like ours with 125 crore people, 1.25 billion people, and not even 2% of this population pays income tax. 3% are income tax assessees, and the corporate sector gets hundreds of thousands of crores in the form of tax breaks. Yeah. And if you look at the statement of revenue foregone, yes.
So what we said at the beginning there were two reasons that we give in the report for why inequality is rising. We discussed one, which was this market fundamentalism. The second is what we call elite capture of the political system, where you move, and we say it's a threat to democracy because you move from one vote per person to one vote per dollar, right? इंडिया के सिस्टम में और सब जगह ये हो रहा है. अभी यहाँ पे हम दो चीजें देख रहे हैं. एक तो इलेक्शंस में पैसा ज्यादा खर्च हो रहा है. A lot of wealth, rich people are spending
काला धन
money.
जी साहब बोलिए.
काला धन, सफेद धन, सब तरह का
और एक गठबंधन है हमारे राजनेता और हमारे बड़े बड़े जो पूंजीपति है.
गठबंधन भी है. और अब पार्लियामेंटेरियंस में देखिए, every successive parliament, the parliamentarians are really now लखपति और करोड़पति के अलावा पार्लियामेंट में ही होना बहुत मुश्किल है.
You are talking on the Lok Sabha television channel, which is owned and operated by the lower house of parliament in India.
So what we are saying is कि और rich countries में ये जो पूरा इंडस्ट्रियल लॉबीज का, we give some estimates of hundreds of millions of dollars. There's a whole new occupation where your job is to make the policies in favor of you. जब rich लोगों और political power, that nexus is a very deadly one, and what we are saying is all the policies will then get tilted to in favor of the rich, and the voices of poor people will get excluded from policy making. जो civil society का काम है, उनकी भी space घटती जा रही है. तो ये बहुत ही dangerous road है for any country in the world.
Professor Rohini Somanathan, I'll just read out a couple of sentences from this report. It talks about the lopsided tax policies, the lax regulatory regimes which rob countries of vital revenue for public services, encourage corrupt practices, weaken the capacity of governments to fight poverty and inequality. Elites in rich and poor countries alike use their heightened political influence to curry government favors, including tax exemptions, sweetheart contracts, land concessions, subsidies, while blocking policies that strengthen the rights of many.
So I think that, tax structure is complicated. Exactly who is getting, exactly what kind of a break
मैडम,
is hard to
ये
tell.
तो इतना जटिल विषय नहीं है, बहुत सरल विषय है.
इतना
हमारे
सरल
देश के
नहीं.
तो 2% लोग आयकर देते हैं.
क्योंकि बहुत से
2% लोग आयकर देते हैं.
बहुत से लोग टैक्सेस नहीं पे करते जो अमीर नहीं हैं. तो जो हम लोगों का टैक्स नेट है वो बहुत छोटा है और देशों के मुकाबले में. और एक वजह ये भी है कि हमें इनकम इनइक्वालिटी का सही अंदाज नहीं है, क्योंकि ये जो आप स्टडीज़ आप कह रहे थे, कुजनेट्स की बात कर रहे थे, पिकेटी की बात कर रहे थे, उनका जिक्र कर रहे थे आप, तो ये सब टैक्स डेटा पे आधार हैं. हमारे देश में बहुत से लोग टैक्स देते नहीं हैं, तो हमें ये भी नहीं पता कि किसकी आय कितनी है और इनकम इनइक्वालिटी कितनी है. तो टैक्सेस ज़्यादा होने चाहिए और उनको ज़्यादा अच्छी तरीके से स्पेंड करना चाहिए. पर at the end of the day, I think I'm optimistic because I believe that governments are elected by people, and I think that people thinking about the kind of future they want will get them to elect better governments.
आप रोहिणी जी की तरह आशावादी हैं?
हम भी आशावादी हैं.
आप आशावादी हैं, बहुत
Oxfam is always very optimistic.
तो आप बोलिए रास्ता क्या है, आगे बढ़ने का रास्ता क्या है?
आगे बढ़ने
और अमीर और गरीब के बीच जो दुराई है, ये अगर इतना बढ़ गया, ये अगर कम करना है. देखिए आप और देशों की बात कीजिए, लैटिन अमेरिका में, ब्राजील के कहिए, अर्जेंटीना में कहिए, ऐसा नहीं है कि देशों में that people haven't been able to reduce extreme inequalities, including what economists call the Gini coefficient. What's the way forward? Yes, sir.
So this is why we are optimistic, because while there is a trend, we know that there are policies that can reverse that trend. आप लैटिन अमेरिका की बात कर रहे हैं, it was the most unequal region in the world. Many countries in Latin America have adopted exactly these policies: investments in health, investments in education, safety nets, more inclusive growth patterns, and they have reversed that trend. And so we think it can be done. यहाँ पे भी हम यही कह रहे हैं. अब जो टैक्स है, ठीक है, बहुत कम थी लोगों पे टैक्स है, पर 2 टैक्स होने चाहिए इंडिया में जो अभी नहीं है. Inheritance tax. If we had a tax, let's say, of 1/3, within 3 generations, the wealth that is created goes back to society and new wealth can be generated. So it's not that anything is wrong with wealth being generated if you're doing productive things, but inherited wealth is not very productive. So opportunity सबके लिए होनी चाहिए to grab that wealth. Secondly, the wealth tax in this country is hardly existent. And then you see the rate at which we are creating wealth. Why don't we tax that?
और लोग कहेंगे कि हमारे जो प्रशासन नहीं है, हमारे सिस्टम्स नहीं है, हमारे पास था, we had inheritance tax, we had wealth tax, but the government got negligible revenues. And very often the government claimed that we were spending more on administering on the administration than in tax
हम
collections.
कहते हैं, पर अब हम जब कह रहे हैं गरीबों की हम सारी स्कीम्स आधार कार्ड से लिंक करते हैं, हम सारी रियल एस्टेट डील्स आधार कार्ड से लिंक कर दें, सारी आधी ब्लैक मनी तो वहीं खत्म हो जाएगी. It's not that hard to do. We are focusing on really trying to strengthen our systems, but we must strengthen systems at the bottom where we also don't want leakages, and at the top. And once we have an ID card that allows us all kinds of things, you know, to
रोहिणी जी, आप क्या सलाह देंगे हमारे
and all of this.
ये लोकसभा टेलीविजन में हमारे सांसदों को, हमारे बड़े बड़े राजनेता है, मंत्री है, आप क्या सलाह देने चाहते हैं? अर्थव्यवस्था में क्या क्या नीति होना चाहिए जो अभी है नहीं हमारे पास, हमारे देश में नहीं है? What are these policies, or what are the programs that you would recommend that the government implement seriously?
I mean, it's very, very simple. There are many, many ways to get there, but what we really want is that constitutional rights, basic rights, a right to shelter, a right to food, a right to education, that these should
एक
actually be there.
संवैधानिक अधिकारियत मिलने से ही क्या सारे समस्या का समाधान हो जाएगा क्या?
बहुत हद तक हो जाएगा. बहुत से देशों
You have a
में,
right to education today.
but
You have a right
don't
to
really,
food today.
You don't.
You have a Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Program, which is akin to a right to work. Yes.
Yeah, I think those have been advances, and as far as the right to education is concerned, it is a right on paper, but it's not a right until there's someone who's showing up who teaches you how to read or write, and you can actually read or write at the end of the day.
तो आपका कहना है ये जो कार्यक्रम है ठीक तरह से लागू नहीं हो रहे? सिर्फ एक संविधान में एक अधिकार, एक संवैधानिक अधिकार is not enough, right?
It's not enough, and we're spending a lot on it, and so it's just
it's
getting
not
to
so
make
much
it work.
policy but implementation of policies and programs, is it?
It's wanting to see the world look a little bit different, wanting to see your country look a little bit different, and then there are many types of policies that can get you there, in terms of their details. But those policies have to ensure that people have a basically
तो हमारे
decent
देश में
standard
क्या
of living.
राजनीतिक इच्छा शक्ति नहीं है? Is there lack of political will?
There is political will, but among very few people, and I think there is a general lack of political will to actually get there. And I think if that was there, we would get very far.
Okay, I'll let you have the last word on the program, Nisha ji. If I asked you to flag some of the key messages that you want to leave behind, those who've heard you and watched you, for our lawmakers, for our policy makers, for our decision makers, what would be those key messages? What needs to be done to at least reduce the kind of extreme inequality that you see in this country?
I think our first message is the one of hope, that there are many things that we could do if we could just reverse the rise in inequality and hasten the rise out of poverty. That link is important. And as I said again, if we could just stop inequality at today's level and prevent it from rising further, we could lift another 90 million out of poverty by 2019, just in 5 years. And if we were to actually reverse it even slightly, then you could actually eradicate poverty fast. We're doing it right now. We were doing it at the rate of 1% of the population each year. We then have now raised it to somewhat like 2% of the population. Other countries have raised 4% at a time per year. I would like to see this hardcore poverty, this 30%, leave us to grow and have these minimum basic rights that Rohini is in 7 to 10 years and not another 30 years.
It's an old cliche about India. We have 1 out of 3 computer software engineers on the planet, but 1 out of 3 persons on this planet who's poor, who's hungry, who's illiterate is also from this country.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Nisha ji, for coming here to the studio of Lok Sabha Television, giving us your views. Professor Somanathan, thank you very much for coming here. And we'll know whether we can really be optimistic that government policies and our decision makers, our policy makers are concerned about reducing the kind of extreme inequality that we see in this country. And time alone will tell whether in other countries of the world too there is the kind of concern that we see in this publication by Oxfam on the importance of curbing extreme inequalities. Thank you very much for being with us on this program.